Welcome to Ignite Intimacy, a podcast exploring intimacy, romantic relationships, sexuality, and everything that relates to these hot topics. We're going in. Are you ready? This is your host, Laura Aisha. Let's do this. All right. What up, Ignite Intimacy community? This is your host, Miss Laura Aisha, and I am really happy to be here again in the flesh for another episode. As you know, we do a lot of these episodes remotely, so it's so fun to actually be face-to-face with our guests, and I am here live and direct with Effy in Brooklyn, Bushwick. Yeah, we're kicking it in Effy's apartment to chat about some juicy topics around relationships. What's going on, Effy?
Hi, Laura. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, it's so great.
For coming all the way out here, and I'm glad you're here in person.
Of course, yeah. I'm glad we could make this work because I'm about to leave New York, so...
I hear so, yeah. Exciting adventures.
Yes, many. I'm looking forward to it. So a good friend of both of ours connected us, and she's someone who's active in the sex positive community here in New York. And when I was asking her, gosh, who do you know that I could talk to about open relationships and sex parties and different things, and she was like, I know the perfect person for you to connect with. So I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Thank you. Yeah, me too. Nice to know that there is referred, you know.
Yes, absolutely. Referrals are always a good thing. So we're going to get into a conversation around relationships. This is something that I've always been particularly curious about. We have talked about different relationship styles on the podcast before. However, we haven't done a deep dive into relationships and relationship styles in a long time. So I'm really excited because you have a wealth of experience in relationships. Talk to us just about, because you actually do coaching and work with others in the area of relationships. So just give us a quick snapshot into the work that you do right now.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm a relationship coach. I work with people who are curious about transitioning into or have hit a roadblock in open relationships, like non-monogamous relationships. My clients come in all shapes and sizes. I'm very fortunate. I feel very privileged that I actually do a job that I love. And I work with couples who want to open up, or couples who have opened up and they're like, oh, we're kind of stumbling into things and we don't really know what we're doing. Or triads who have run into an issue and they've been seeking help with traditional therapists or counselors, and their relationship style is sort of pathologized or ignored as a part of the problem that they're having. So I have an understanding of the dynamics of those relationships. So those are the people that I work with.
Awesome.
And it's super, super interesting.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Like getting a opportunity to go into one of the most personal, intimate parts of someone's life, their relationship, but not just any relationship, all different styles of relationships and the dynamics and layers that I can only imagine, come along with open relationships and polyamorous pods and just the whole world of it.
For sure. I always say I get the front row seats to the best stories out there. And it's amazing to see people open up and share. It's also amazing to see transformations and like paradigm shifts that happen in the room, and people who come in like tentative about potentially opening up and sort of really going through and doing the work and coming out the other side and like excited and sort of can't wait to go out and try things and feel safe, secure, and comfortable. And it's great. Like I get to see all that. And it's also humbling that when people really put their mind to it and they engage, what is possible in terms of like what they can create in the world. And I've had some, I have easy clients that are like, been together for a few years, they have great communication, and they've been talking about opening up for a while, so they come in and they just need a bit of guidance, a bit of information, pointing in the right direction. You know, those are kind of the easy clients. Then I have, you know, tough clients that are coming to me post some sort of transgression. There's been an affair, or there's been lying and deceit, and they kind of want to stay together, but there's hurt and trauma in the relationship, and they sort of want to restructure the relationship and maybe have an open one. And those are sort of more complicated ones that take a lot of work. And it's just, I find it humbling to see when people do the work. Like, they get stuck in and they fight for their relationship, and they, you know, let go of some of the constructs that heavily prescribed to us, and they, you know, show up every week and they do their homework, and they, you know, allow transformation to happen because they care for their relationship.
Yeah.
And that's really humbling to watch.
Well, so, and I can imagine, love relationships are so tender and so powerful and can be all encompassing.
Yeah.
Right? And whether there's amazing things happening or there are really difficult, challenging things happening. So being able to hold that space is a really unique and special place to be.
For sure. Privilege. It's a privilege.
It's a privilege.
I really do think it's a privilege.
Yeah.
I coach around this idea of relationship by design. I think that we should consciously and actively design relationships in which we can thrive. Personally, I'm not invested in that design. I'm not invested in the end design, I should say.
Yeah.
If people want to be, you know, monogamous, non-monogamous, solo, in a polyfidelitous relationship where it's like a triad or a quad, the end design I have no stakes in.
Yeah.
But I am passionate about the process. I am passionate about people stopping, taking a close look at their relationship, taking a close look at themselves, and then designing something so that everybody in the relationship, whether it's one person, two people, three people, whatever it is, are thriving most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so we're going to go more into the relationship by design stuff. However, I want you to give our audience a snapshot into you and your life and, like, you know, what type of relationship explorer and adventurer have you been? Where did the seeds of this get planted, and when did you start to get really curious about different relationship styles? And where are you from? Where were you born? Give us your herstory.
Sure. Okay, so let me just put things into a nice story so that it is not long-winded. I was born in Europe. I lived all around the world for a decade. For my previous job, I was in a corporate world in advertising. Very, very different life than I lead now. I was in the career ladder. I rushed up, you know, as soon as I finished college, I was in the workforce. I knew my career and I went up that ladder and you know, I did well. That was all kind of what I put my energy into. And part of why I did that is because very, very early on, I was not doing well with relationships. I have, people who follow me will have heard me say this. I have a history of serial infidelity. So I cheated on a lot of previous partners, and it never ended well. And I would cheat, and then I would confess. And the cheating never happened because I was unhappy or unsettled and I was looking for something else. Actually, cheating was happening when I was the most happiest and comfortable and, you know, really felt secure in the relationship. And then I was like, I want to explore, you know. And I would go and sort of explore, and I would kind of do it in a very sort of cognitively dissonant kind of way. Like I knew I was doing wrong, but like in my head I was like, but am I? Like something is, you know, it's not that bad. I'm very devoted to my partner. I'm really devoted to this relationship. Like what I'm doing isn't really taking away. Like I would kind of go through these thought processes in my head, and then I would have what I call these violent crashes into reality where, you know, I was cheating, I was lying, and I was hurting people. And I would confess, and there's often tears and heartbreak, and I would say, I'm never doing this again, and then only to like rinse and repeat. I have been married before, and, you know, I thought that if I got married, it wouldn't happen. It happened again, same story. And, you know, I just couldn't figure out why it was happening and why I wasn't succeeding, and I knew that it wasn't because I didn't love people. There was just something wrong. And then at some point I decided that relationships weren't for me. I was like, relationships, not everyone's good at everything. I'm not good at relationships. I'm just gonna like pause, put it to one side. I don't want to hurt people anymore. I don't want to hurt myself anymore. I'm gonna really focus on my career, which was great for my bank account, not so great for my heart. And I had 10 years of just running around the world in this corporate job, doing really well, until I moved to New York, and a bunch of things collided at the same time. So I moved to New York, and after many years of living and working around the world, suddenly a place felt like home. And it was an informed decision. I felt like it really felt like home. And I would say things like I've seen most of the big cities, or like I've seen most of the big cities and places around the world, and it never felt like this before. So first time I felt at home. And then because I stopped traveling for work, I took a stationary job in New York, and then that started to feel not good for me. So I realized what I liked about my previous role was that I was doing all the traveling and running around the world, but as soon as that stopped, the job stopped not being satisfying or interesting.
Yeah.
So I found home, and then job satisfaction not happening anymore. And then during that time, a bunch of things, one thing led to another, and I collided with the non-monogamous, sex-positive community in New York City. And then suddenly I met a bunch of people who were doing relationships differently.
Wow.
And these were sane, professional, smart, warm, friendly people who were in, these relationships that they designed for themselves. They had a couple of partners, or a wife and a boyfriend, or and they were great. They were really good people, and they were my people. And suddenly a light bulb went on. I was like, oh, it's not that I'm not good at relationships. I'm just not good at one type of relationship. And by the way, you don't have to have just the one type of relationship. Yeah. So it was like, okay, so it was like so I found home, my job wasn't satisfying anymore, and I realized that this whole new world of relationships that I just had to figure out for myself. And I was in a fortunate position to be able to press pause on everything and sort of do this deep dive. My inner nerd was alive, and so I sort of took 2 years really to just really focus on relationships and psychology around relationships and attachment theory, and also figuring out what is it like now that I figured out that I could do anything in terms of relationship. Now I had to figure out what is it that I want, right? So I started dating within the community. There were certain things that I knew I would be able to do. For example, I knew that I could be in a primary relationship with somebody and date somebody else, or have them date somebody else. What I didn't know, for example, is what it would be like to be a secondary in a relationship. So could I date somebody who had another primary partner? So I was like, well, let's find out. And then I did that. So my sort of first step into this world, participating, was about 5 years ago. I started dating somebody who had a primary partner at the time. And I was very, very fortunate. These people who are still good friends of mine made it really easy for me. They were very welcoming and generous and guided me. My first metamor, so my lover's lover, metamor is your lover's lover, she set some super high standards of like, how do you treat your metamor, being open, honest, and generous, kind and warm, boundaries, and sort of working together and to make, so that we could all exist and thrive. And they set some really high standards for me. And I was like, I can do this. Like, This is what I want for myself.
Well, so what does this look like? Like, is this, so you connect with these people. Can you just bring us through a scenario? Like, I'm visual. So like, I want to like visualize, like, what does this actually look like? Was it like, you meet these people, it's like, this is this feels like a potential match. We're all going to meet and have dinner together or whatever. And then what does it look like?
Sure. So my first poly boyfriend is a guy called Kenneth Play. He's actually a great sex educator. You can look him up.
Yeah, I'm familiar with him.
So that was like six years ago, and at the time he was dating a wonderful woman called Jennifer Tavez, and she's a costume designer. Her brand is Costumegasm. So if you're ever looking for costumes, look him up. Costumegasm. She's brilliant. She's a brilliantly talented woman. So they were my like first poly adventures. At the time, Kenneth and I were dating, and Jennifer and I didn't have a romantic relationship. And Kenneth pursued me for a while, but I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. But I'm like, I don't know. And eventually he was persistent, in a very nice way. And we started to date. And as I did, he was very open from the beginning. I think I met Jennifer around about the same time and I met Kenneth. And she was very warm and friendly. And he and I started dating. We sort of start splitting time of like how much time he spends with me and how much time he spends with Jennifer. And then she and I got really close. So the three of us started to hang out, you know, in a way that would go, you know, we'd go to Chinatown for like fun dinners and, you know, hang out in the park and cuddle and like share our lives together. And that's kind of what it looked like. Does that help?
Yeah. Well, and then so with this other scenario, it's like when you're actually speaking in terms of agreements. What does that look like? Like, bring us into a scenario like that, like where you're actually like sharing agreements. Because I'm just thinking, like, I guess through experience, you know what you're willing to deal with and not, and what you desire to experience. And we're human beings, right? So there's like jealousy, there's feeling left out, there's all these other things that can pop in, I'm sure, I'm assuming, when your loved one is going out with someone else, and you know, where there's the potential that they'll be sexual together. And you know, like that whole thing around like, well, what if they like them more than me, or what if they do it better than I do, all of that stuff. Yeah.
So again, I'm very fortunate because both Kenneth and Jennifer are like ninja poly folk, right? They are ninja level. They're both very poly. They both had other partners. I mean, Jennifer had other partners as well. So, and Jennifer, I would actually, there's a lot, the relationship between us was really, for me, an important, groundbreaking relationship because she made it okay. Because my biggest fear was that I didn't want to be a threat. I didn't want to be seen as a threat. Like that was, everybody has their own hang-ups. Sure, jealousy is one, being, you know, feeling left out, insecurity about, you know, is the other person better than me, right? You mentioned those. So we all have our own stuff. And my stuff was like, I just didn't want to be seen as a threat. I wanted to be like a part of the bunch and not be seen as a threat.
Yeah.
And Jennifer, I never felt like she found me threatening. She was always warm, kind, and friendly towards me. So I felt very comfortable. And she's also very good at her boundaries. So, and in a sweet, kind way, you know. So I never felt lost. I never felt like I was threatening anybody. And I knew that as long as I respected their relationship, the Jennifer was going to respect my relationship with Kenneth. And she did. And because she had other partners, scheduling kind of worked, right? Because she wanted to be somebody else and then we could be together. So that, you know, that we were lucky. We were lucky. I was lucky, I should say. And sort of I dated Kenneth for maybe the best part of 2 years.
Wow.
And I actually threw them, for completely unrelated reasons, they decided to split up. And I threw them a conscious uncoupling party.
Wow.
You know, and that was fun because it was, you know, all of our friends and lovers and we sort of celebrated what they've had and supported them through the transition for their the next relationship. So going back to how did it work out, clear boundaries and a lot of respect is what I would say. Those are like the two main things that made that relationship work.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
And, you know, I always say this, I was very fortunate. Like, that relationship, that really set the tone for me.
And then, so, talk to us about, like, when did you then have a relationship where you had a primary partner and you had secondary partners?
So that actually didn't happen for a long time. I was really just having these, like, relationships that I was actually enjoying being this, like, secondary person where I didn't have to worry about a full-blown relationship, and I was like enjoying these connections. And really, I would say maybe in the last year that I would say that my current partner, who just recently moved in, is kind of primary in that we live together now. Yeah. But before that, I mean, I still do. So my longest sort of poly relationship is with my other partner who lives downstairs with his wife. And he and I have been together for 4 years. Wow. That's a long relationship. Yeah. And then that's interesting because even though technically I'm a secondary partner, and in my practice I don't actually use that language because I don't think it serves. The language that I use is a core relationship and auxiliary relationships. Okay. And so as an auxiliary relationship, the lines are blurred, like I don't really know what's the difference between my relationship with him and his relationship with his wife is in terms of like He's always available if I ever need him. We spend a lot of time together. We live under the same roof, although we have our separate apartments. We, planned, we future plan somewhat together. Our finances are separated. But other than that, it's like, after a while, when you have a long-term relationship in a poly way, like the hierarchy kind of blurs a little bit.
Okay.
So it's, and the other part of that is I need a lot of alone time. So I need, like, I'm an introvert, whether I'm in a primary relationship or, multiple relationships, I do need a relationship with myself that is very, like, I need everybody to go away now for a little bit, And in that way, I didn't feel like, Andrew wasn't available when I wanted him, for example.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of hard to tell, after a while these lines blur, Right now I have a primary relationship, somebody that I nest with, a nesting partner, I guess. My other relationship, my 4-year relationship remains. We all live in the same roof. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's amazing. And I should add, actually, for your audience, I've been doing what I'm doing now for almost 2 years. I've studied it I've studied it for 2 years, and I've been doing what I'm doing for almost 3 years. The coaching,
yeah.
Yes. I've seen tens of relationships, many relationships, and I've helped a bunch of people transition into some sort of an open relationship, in a polyamorous relationship. The way that our relationship, the kitchen table poly style that we have, where we live under the same roof, plan together, sit around and break bread every now and then, and we're a support network, is definitely on the fringes. I don't see full-blown poly the way we live it that often. It's not very common.
Okay.
So when I tell people my story, I like to put a caveat in saying, like, this is not very common. What we do isn't very common. It's somewhat on the fringes. We're very fortunate that we make it work and it works for us. But it's not like the way that my relationship is structured isn't like a template for non-monogamy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and that's like any relationship.
Absolutely, yes.
Like every relationship is unique.
Sure.
Right? And so you happen to have this particular experience. And I think it's certainly something that is intriguing and attractive, right? And so now I'm curious about, because in my experience, I've dated people in relationships, but I haven't yet like really been like a secondary or like had an auxiliary relationship with someone who's in a primary relationship. I've also had friends who've experienced infidelity in their relationships, and they've played with the idea of like, should we open this up? Like there's something keeping them together, but they're not sure if they should open it up. And so, I mean, let's say you're talking with one of your clients and they have had something happen in their relationship where they're looking at opening it up. What might that conversation sound like? Or what might you encourage them to explore?
Sure.
In order to make a conscious choice about that?
Sure. So ideally, the best relationships to open up are happy and healthy ones. Ideally. Now, it doesn't mean to say those are the only relationships you can open up, right? But the ideal scenario is like happy, healthy relationships that are ready to sort of open up and explore, right? But I definitely have a ton of clients who are coming to me post-transgression, some sort of an affair, where they want to be together, like you've said, but they want to restructure the relationship and allow other partners to come in. Now, those are hard because, especially if the trust is broken, there needs to be healing, that needs to be rebuilt. People need to make very conscious decisions of leaving the past in the past and look forward, which is, it takes a lot of mental energy and emotional labor, and then actively design something new and then go towards that and not be pulled back by the past. I have had, some clients that have done amazing things where not only they've managed to restructure their relationship, but the person that they had an affair with, we were able to fold them into the core relationship. And a lot of forgiveness had to happen, and a lot of understanding and healing had to happen. And it's like, it's a lot of hard work. So with that in mind, so if post-affair is not a time to be opening up a relationship, ideally, if you think that you're going to have an affair, pause and start having that conversation before you're compelled to be with somebody else. A good way to start a conversation with your partner is to talk about non-monogamy conceptually. So you can say things like, oh, I've read this article, share an article with them and say, oh, I read this article, like, what are your thoughts? Or I've heard, a lot of people, use me, oh, I've read this woman talk about non-monogamy, what are your thoughts? So you sort of approach the subject as a concept rather than, how do you feel about opening up, right? Because that's immediately threatening.
Yeah.
And it gets people defensive and it gets people into an insecure space, and that's just not a good way to start a conversation.
Yeah.
So start talking about the idea conceptually. Talk about the other tip is not to champion it hard, right? And realize, accept what's attractive to you, but also be clear about what concerns you have about it too. And you will have concerns. You should have concerns. If you thought it through properly, you would be attracted to it, sure, but you'd also be like, oof, how am I going to feel about jealousy? Like, how am I going to feel about my partner with somebody else, right? So I think if you're talking about the subject with a partner, to be really, really honest and clear about, rather than what they call poly preaching, like, this is the best thing ever, non-monogamy is the best, like, everything's gonna go great. It's like, this is really interesting, this is what I'm really attracted to, and here are the parts that I'm a bit concerned about, like, what would be your concerns, right?
Yeah.
And then the next question, next sort of way to have that, advance that conversation is like, if we were to be non-monogamous, what do you think what would that look like for you? Right? And then you can kind of dream and fantasize about what it might look like without making any commitments. And these conversations should be had like over a period of time. I even say to people like no more than an hour at a time. Like and do it when you're feeling like, don't do it if you've just had an argument and you're like your answer is like, I want an open relationship. Like, don't end an argument with like, I want an open relationship. Like, that's not a way to approach this.
Yeah.
Do it, the halt, people talk about halt, not when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired.
Yeah.
So when you're cozy and warm and relaxed and, your mind is not busy with something else, when you have a ton of time, maybe over a glass of wine, and start having that conversation, spread it out over a couple of months, an hour here, an hour there, be willing to debrief the conversation the next day. So if you've had a conversation with your partner and you moved on, it's really worth checking in the next day and be like, that conversation that we had, like, how do you feel about that? Because sometimes people get really anxious about it and they're holding it in.
Yeah.
So just to create a space where you can have a continuous conversation around it. And then I would take, if you agree that it's something that you want to try, start really slow. Go out together and kind of, feel it out. Like, go out and maybe, like, point people that you fancy, like, people that you like to one another and see what that feels like. Maybe agree to go on a date where it's a date, it's just going to be a date. You're going to go out and drinks with somebody and come home and see what that feels like, right? And then maybe, if you're that way inclined, like, go to a sex party. I always tell people, like, go and share sexual space with other people and see what that feels like.
Yeah.
If it's available to you. It's not for everyone, but it's like, sex parties are really good places to go and just, like, sit in it and see what it feels like.
Yeah. Yeah, like, what's my experience here?
Right.
Like, I may love it, I may hate it, it may be something that I'm like, well, okay, that was interesting. Would I go back? Yeah.
The other part is, communication. Really look at your communication within your relationship. You need to be, I tell people, you need to work on communication like your life depends on it.
Yeah.
And that would be, once you start to talk about non-monogamy, the thing that you need to, like, master is communication. There are great tools out there. Nonviolent communication is a great start. It gives you a really good structure of how to think about it. And the final thing that I would say is, along with communication, number one rule is know thyself. You really need to get to know yourself and the good, the good, bad, and the ugly. Like, what are you really good at? Where do you shine? And where are your struggles? Where are your triggers? How do you show and receive love? How do you handle conflict? Do you shut down? Do you act out? Do you disappear? And get really clear about that stuff and own up to it. And then talk with your partner with all that stuff in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's certainly, what I'm getting from what you're saying is just, it's certainly not something to be flippant about.
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. No.
Yeah.
And it's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. And it's something that you want to have a lot of love and care in the process.
Yes.
Because, you love your partner, right? And whether it's because something is not working or you desire more or there's just, something new that is aching to be opened up, addressing that in a slow and steady way. And it's just with sex, I find it less and less enjoyable and to have rush into sex with people these days, right? So it's taking your time and easing in and
yeah, and make strategies. Jealousy is going to come up, and there are, there are a lot of resources out there. If you can't work with a coach, there's material, there are great books out there, specifically on jealousy. There is Kitty Chambliss is also a podcaster specifically about non-monogamy. Her podcast is called Loving Without Boundaries.
Okay.
She's written a book about jealousy that, I recommend to people. That there's the jealousy workbook that's available. These are all available online. Do your work, do your homework. These things are going to come up, and like you said, you do love your partner. Be kind and compassionate. While you're doing this, take your time. There's no rush, and if there is a rush,
why is there a rush?
Well, exactly. There's something wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What's driving that?
Right. And handle that. If it means therapy, counseling, coaching, if you're rushing into opening up, it's a symptom of something. And deal with that, because that is gonna come and bite you in the ass if you don't deal with that.
Yep. Awesome. Amazing. Okay, so this has been great. So for single people interested in exploring this world, what would be a suggestion for them?
Sure. So I would say get very clear on your boundaries and what you need out of relationships. So when you are, dating, is it that you're dating to find a partner that you then want to be in an open relationship with? Or are you okay dating people that are already in other relationships, right? So you need to sort of get clear about that. And I have to say, there's no way of really knowing until you do it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you think you're going to be okay with something until you're in it, and then you're like, whoa, this does not feel good, And then in those situations, you need to be connected with yourself, so to be able to sort of gracefully bow out of situations if it isn't working for you. So be prepared to suck it up and bow out of situations, and then sort of handle things afterwards.
Okay.
Get very clear about your boundaries. Practice your no's, and just if you need to, just hold on to your boundaries. That will be number one thing. The other thing that I would say, which comes up a lot, is mirroring availability. Right. So what does that mean? Especially if you're a solo person without any partners and you're dating somebody who already has a partner or maybe two partners, right? I say the human heart can accommodate as many people, endless number of people, but our schedules can't. So that's where the struggle starts, right? When your desires have a violent crash into reality of the 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the absolute need for sleep and laundry, right? You are left with a handful of hours to then distribute among people that you want to be with. So if you have multiple partners and you're really taking care of those relationships, you stretch thin, right?
Yeah.
So if you're on the receiving end of that, if you're dating somebody who is sort of managing multiple relationships and they're doing their best, what you don't want to be in a situation of is feeling like you're not getting enough, right? So the way to manage that expectations is the mirror availability. So if they're available to you, once a week and, some texting throughout the week, right? Then mirror that availability, and whatever is left, distribute that in other ways, rather than sitting around waiting for them to call you or text you, right? And then just saying oh, but they're with their other partner and I don't have another partner, and go down that path. Sure. So they're available to you during that time, then that's your availability for that relationship yourself. Yeah. Whatever is left,
live your life.
Live your life. Spend with your friends, self-care, hobbies, passions, whatever it is, live a full life. Yeah. So that would be my number one tip to anybody who's dating as a solo person in a non-monogamous sort of structure.
Okay, cool. So, all right. So that brought up two other things. One is, okay, so I've had this experience a couple of times in the last year where a man will say he's in an open relationship and I am not buying it. right?
Sure.
So in the world of open relationships, how normal is it, or whatever, regular, that someone in an open relationship, you know, I want to say like, well, I'd love to meet your wife, you know? And so how do you know when someone's being legit or not?
Yeah, good question. There really isn't a way to know other than you have to take your people's word for it, right? Because you also don't know what the arrangements are on the other side.
Sure.
There are people who have what they call a don't ask, don't tell with their partners, which is they have agreed that one party or both of them are going to be, you know, dating other people, but they don't want, the other party doesn't want to know, right? So they agree and they have some boundaries around it. There is no transgression happening, but they've also agreed as a part of that they don't want to know any details, right? So if you come along and say, I want to meet your wife, and he's like, we have a don't ask, don't tell, like, she doesn't want to meet you, there's no way of verifying that, right? Other than your gut, right? Or if they're, like, in my situation, for example, if they have a relationship like mine, we'd be like, sure, come for our family brunch, and you can meet my partner, my other partner, my partner's wife, my partner's wife's boyfriend, you know, and, like, come for brunch, right? So, like, it depends who you're working, who you're having a relationship with, and unfortunately, like anything, people lie and people cheat, and non-monogamy gives people this like language to navigate that space, and there's really no way of knowing other than like asking some smart questions, listening to your gut, you know, if they seem like sneaky, or if there's like a sense of like, you know, like sneakiness or guilt or shame, like it just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
It probably isn't right.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But then again, I know people who also remember that you as a person who's dating can have boundaries too.
Yeah.
So maybe your boundary is, if I'm going to date you, I want to know your wife.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to know that your wife is okay.
Totally.
I don't need to be her best friend, but her and I need to somehow touch base so that I know that I'm not a part of, you know, cheating. Right?
Exactly.
And you're entitled to that.
Yeah.
If it's important to you, you're entitled to that. And if they're not willing to do that, it's not a good match.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, cool. And then the other thing is like, how do you hold love for multiple people at the same time? Because, you know, when you're like really into someone, you know, and I've had this experience where it's like, okay, I'm really into someone, and then there's someone else over here that I'm also seeing. And like, you know, at different times in the relationship, you can be at different levels of being really into someone, right?
Sure, yeah.
The experience is different.
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
Sure. So, couple of things, right? And this is the common metaphor people will use. People who's like talking about non-monogamy will use this metaphor, which is most people have siblings, right? And then, you know, your parents love you. You know, it doesn't because they had one kid, they suddenly don't have, you know, love for another kid, right? We know that we have the mechanics to love multiple people.
Yeah.
Most of us, you know, if we have two parents, three parents, we are able to love our, you know, parents, and then they're able to love multiple kids. So we know the human's capacity for love, right? So it's available. Then it's about like managing that, right? Managing that in terms of affection, time, attention, right? And then it becomes this like sweet spot between feeling and an intellectual sort of, you know, management of that, right? And also an understanding that feelings come in ebbs and flows, right? Even with parents, you know, it's not that they don't love the kids the same way, but maybe one kid is easier than the other one, or in that moment that kid needs more attention for whatever reason. So like the shift happens within that anyway, right? So just realize that it's going to happen. Realize that some of it is going to be intellectual. Like you're going to be like, yes, I have all this like new relationship energy happening here, and I'm like bouncing around in this like silly, you know, teenage like love here, but this is my partner of 4 years and they've been in my life this whole time. I know I love them, I'm just distracted right now.
Yeah.
So like I'm gonna show up for this relationship anyway. Like I'm gonna show up and make sure that we're there for date night. I'm gonna show up, you know, and like be kind and nice and whatever we have rituals in place. Sometimes it's just an intellectual override, right? And the other part that works, again, if it makes sense within your relationship, and I'm fortunate that it does, sharing your feelings can be a way of connecting with your partner as well. So if you're having this like new relationship energy, like butterflies, love happening here. If you're able to like bring that home and bring the excitement home and share, and then your partner is able to like share that with you, then that feeds the connection, right? And what I often see both in clients and in my relationship, when that's allowed, when that's facilitated and embraced in my relationship. So if I like meet somebody and I'm all giddy, I come home and I sort of share that with my partner, and they celebrate with me. There is a sense of gratitude, like it bursts out of me that this is allowed and this is like facilitated and nurtured, and now I'm like happy and giddy because I met this person, and like my love for my other partner is rejuvenated because they're like celebrating with me. Yeah, right. Yeah. So I mean that's like the ideal scenario, right? That happens in poly, and then you sort of manage it in that way.
Amazing. Well, this has been incredible, Effy. I'm so grateful to jam on this topic with you because it's something I've always been really curious about for myself, and I've learned quite a bit about since I launched the podcast. So how can people find you online? How can people connect with you?
Sure. effyblue.com, EFFY, blue like the sky.com is my website. If you want to book a 20-minute chat with me, go to my website, top right corner. It's very clear. You can book a call with me straight away. You can jump on a call if you whatever we need to chat about, we can. You can follow me on Facebook. If you just search for me on Facebook, I come up right at the top. Those are really the best ways.
Okay.
I also run a community organization called Curious Fox like the animal.
Okay.
If you're in New York City, if you want to come to events, so every month I host events called Curious Fox Social. We pick a theme in line with, non-monogamy and what we're talking about. I put a panel together of people who have been doing it for a while, and we have a discussion for about an hour or so, and then we socialize afterwards. And you can find out more about that, again, on Facebook. If you look for Curious Fox on Facebook, it comes up.
Okay.
It is for those who are curious. We say no commitment, no pressure, just curiosity. Most of the people who come, it's a great community of people, been growing for 2.5 years. They're just curious. They're exploring. They're curious. They have questions. They want to meet a community and meet like-minded people. So they show up. If that's you, join us.
Cool. Amazing. Okay, so effyblue.com, EFFYBLUE.com, Facebook Effy Blue, and CuriousFox.com. Is it?
No.
Okay.
We are CuriousFoxes.com.
We are CuriousFoxes.com.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll have all of that in the show notes. And what a great pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. This is a great conversation. I feel like I talked at you for a while. But yeah it's great questions. And thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely. Okay, cool. So Ignite Intimacy audience, you heard it here. We got the scoop on different relationship styles with Effy Blue. Check her out, effyblue.com and Effy Blue on Facebook, Curious Fox. We are CuriousFoxes.com, and we will continue to explore this topic because it's a juicy one, it's a big one, and I know that many of us are interested in like what's really possible when we're living the relationship style that suits us fully, truly, and absolutely. So we love y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can always reach out to us if for some reason you spaced out and don't want to rewind or whatever. Check the show notes. hello@igniteintimacy.com with your questions, comments. If you want to connect with Effy, we can link that up for you. And yeah, stay blessed. Keep exploring. Stay curious. And we'll see you on the next one. Ciao for now. Thanks for tuning in to another conversation on the Ignite Intimacy podcast hotline. We love that you choose to spend your time with us. Check us out at igniteintimacy.com. Subscribe to us on iTunes and leave us a review and a rating. It helps more people know about us. We love to hear from you. You can email us with questions, comments, or suggestions to hello@igniteintimacy.com. And tell your friends. Music was arranged by Jason Pfaff and Mike Corey, and this podcast is produced by yours truly, Laura Aisha. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one. In the meantime, let your light shine bright and ignite your intimacy.